talking point. Owen, you are an omnivore. Rex, you're a vegan.
I am.
So try to remember all these. I can throw them out later. How long have you been a vegan? Why are you? And later on we'll talk about why do you two think that among the U.S. population, a disproportionate percentage of atheists are vegan, vegetarian, white, gay, transgender.
So let's take those one at a time.
Okay.
I'll tell you my story first. I was raised kosher. I mentioned this before. The church I grew up in from birth in 1973 until the church basically ended in 1994. That church followed the Old Testament. And so by kosher, I mean we did not eat shellfish, we did not eat pork. That's the big ones. We didn't eat catfish because there's no fins and scales. But I did certainly grow up eating, beef, chicken, turkey, dairy, egg. And when that church ended in 1994, basically the cult just dismantled. And I was having no religion at all for about 5 years. I wasn't an atheist. I would have said I still believe in the Bible, but I wasn't attending church anywhere. About halfway through that period, in 1997, I saw a lot of the kids that I was growing up with start eating the pork and the shrimp, and it was gross to me. And I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to eat something that I'd never eaten. But I also didn't want to not do it for religious reasons. And I think subconsciously, I couldn't have even told you this. So this is May 31st, 1997. I got halfway through a cheeseburger, I set it down, and I said, I'm done. And I've never had meat since. So that was 1997. So 21 years I haven't had any meat. At the time, I couldn't have told you that it was this internal dissonance about kosher that was leading me to that decision, but I'm sure it was. But a funny thing happened. And I've heard this from other vegans and vegetarians, is that once you're no longer participating in the eating of animal flesh, it's a whole lot easier to see it for what it is. It's a whole lot easier to be honest about the suffering and the death that goes with modern factory farming and the slaughterhouse experience and all that. And so I'd say probably within 3 months of becoming vegetarian for unrelated reasons, I was a vegetarian for ethical reasons. I would have.
You're an ethical vegan?
I would have very quickly told you, I try to be an ethical everything, I would have very soon on told you though that my motivation now, maybe not the initial catalyst, but my motivation was to prevent animal suffering. And so from 1997 to 2008, I didn't eat any animals at all, but I was still pounding the egg and the cheese. And then in 2008, in June of 2008, there was Morgan Spurlock had a series called 30 Days. Remember, he was the Super Size Me guy that did the McDonald's stuff. And then he had a follow-up series called 30 Days where he would do 30 days of different things. He had 30 days of an atheist with a Christian, 30 days on minimum wage, 30 days, different things, like living on minimum wage for 30 days, homeless for 30 days. He had these different things, and it was sort of to step into those experiences. Well, one of the episodes was 30 days with this vegan PETA member going and living with this family of hunters and meat eaters, right? And so they're going to have this dialogue for 30 days. And when the animal rights person was talking about meat and the nightmare of the slaughterhouse and the factory farm and the feedlot, I agree with all that. And then she starts talking about egg and dairy, and it's just as bad or worse. And I had never really sort of faced that reality. And so that was my moment. This was June of 2008. And the very next day I became a vegan. So that was a long answer to your question.
Yeah.
Vegetarian since 97, vegan since 2008, and pork and shellfish free since birth.
Right. Okay. And listening to this, Owen, does any of it come across convincing to you? Or is it causing any dissonance?
Not really.
Well, I wasn't making an argument. I was just
Right.
So,
Rex and
I have been friends for a long time. I find the ethical vegan position to be compelling. There is certainly a very good life perspective about respecting all life that could lead someone to veganism. I happen to admire people that are capable of making that choice. But we have a whole presentation on that subject that I don't know if we'll ever give again. But there was a video of it.
You can watch it online.
You can watch it online, exactly, a video. I think we both made our best case. I think that, and I'll say this for all followers, I don't criticize veganism, I don't criticize people who want to be vegan, and if people feel like that's something that they need to do for their own conscience, that I absolutely would encourage you to do that, and I won't criticize it. What I will say is, just make very careful decisions about what you choose to eat. Make sure that you're getting all of the vitamins that you need. Make sure you're getting all the micronutrients. B12 and D3 are significantly at risk for people who undertake vegan diets. I am a science nerd, and I'm married to a scientist, a biologist actually. And so when I prepared my presentation, I had kind of a lot of research to help me put it together. So just make good choices, get complete protein, get all of the nutrients that you need, the vitamins and the micronutrients. There are some challenges that are definitely, can be overcome, right? I will say this too about veganism, it's far, far easier to be white and wealthy and Western.
Yes.
There is a wealthy white Western diet privilege. If you have Whole Foods down the street, and if you have the skin that is pale enough and you live in mid-latitude so that your body can synthesize D3 from sunlight, then you can successfully live a vegan diet. But I'll also say that if you undertake the vegan diet and you suffer health consequences in a year or 2 or 3, do not hesitate to tell your physicians that you are a new vegan, because that can be extremely difficult to diagnose if you are unfamiliar. And particularly with young children, it is also possible for infants and children to live healthy, capable lives on a vegan diet. His daughter is an excellent example. She's a triathlete, and Rex and I are runners. So I'm totally on board with that. But you have to be very, very careful. And medical and scientific literature is full of examples of parents who were extremely well-intentioned and permanently harmed their children in completely irreparable ways because they didn't understand that they were playing with fire.
But Owen, you know what the literature is also full of is omnivores that eat garbage diets
this
and
is
ruin
true.
their children, obesity and diabetes.
This is true. I know it's important to you.
It's a separate
I didn't interrupt
issue
you.
though, right?
Well, no. I mean, the fact that you can be a vegan or an omnivore and eat a healthy diet or a garbage diet. I mean,
True,
I didn't
but it
interrupt
costs, Owen's right, it does, it is expensive being a vegetarian or a vegan.
It's not-
It costs more.
But there's no
To get it right, I've been a vegetarian 6 years.
Rex is right that anybody who rides around in a vehicle is susceptible to a traumatic brain injury. I'm going to make an analogy, okay? What I'm talking about is people riding on motorcycles without helmets. That particular category of person riding around a vehicle is substantially higher risk. The risks are unique to that set of choices. And all I'm doing is saying that those risks are unique and not more broadly applicable to other people riding around in vehicles.
Right.
Choosing to be a vegan is uniquely risky in a way that is not uniquely risky to a person that eats an egg or eats some cheese or eats some beef.
Right.
If you consume those things, then you are guaranteed to get all of the nutrients that your body needs. Can you still screw it up and be fat and be unhealthy and develop type 2 diabetes later in life? Yes, you can. But the risks that you are taking as a vegan
much reduced.
The risks you're taking as a vegan are unique to your lifestyle choices as a vegan, and so you should plan. I'm not saying not to do it. I'm just saying do it with your eyes open and prepare.
Well, yeah, you need to know how to replace the nutrients that you are rejecting, and but what Rex was saying was also true about a lot of people who just eat without being conscious about what they're eating can be lacking significantly in nutrients as well.
That's exactly right.
It can be the same nutrient, but I think becoming more deliberate about your diet, it comes with needing to know what that is going to entail. You know, when I went pescatarian, I knew that I needed to take certain vitamins to replenish that, and to be conscious about complete proteins and all that. And you need to make sure that, you know, it's great if you become more conscious about being a consumer and an eater in general, whether you're an omnivore or not. But making sure that you are getting the nutrients that you need within whatever diet you choose is important.
question.
So I think that was
What are
the
the
major
concerns?
point you were making.
I have a question. What are
Yeah.
the concerns? What are
Well,
the specific concerns?
concerns about
If you don't eat meat.
Oh, well,
If
well,
Yeah,
Rex just
well,
listed
I'm
up
just
a bunch
asking.
of his
I'm
concerns.
asking.
well, no.
What are the specific
If you watch the video we did, the first thing I conceded is that
I'm just
there is a spectrum for both vegans and omnivores. So think about this. I started out telling you that my motivation was ethical, right? I don't want to hurt animals.
Yeah.
That doesn't automatically make me healthy.
No.
I can be a vegan
Right.
and live on
That's what
Dr.
I'm
Pepper
asking
and
for.
Skittles and French fries, and I'm not going to be very healthy.
No,
But
yeah.
I can also eat a whole food plant-based diet with fruits and vegetables and grains, and I'm going to be very healthy, right? I think the same spectrum exists for omnivores. I think if you eat a bunch of fast food and fried food and junk and garbage
It's
and
not good
sugar
for you,
and,
right?
and added
Yeah.
fat and added salt, you're probably going to be very unhealthy.
It's not
You're
bad.
going to
Or
have
it's
obesity
bad.
and heart disease and hypertension and all those things.
Yeah.
I also think you can eat a very healthy omnivore diet, and you know, there's ways to do that.
That's what I'm
There's
asking.
different approaches to that. You know, the keto people would tell you one thing, and
That's a reference to.
the food pyramid people would tell you one thing. That's fine. I fully concede there's a spectrum in both cases.
I'm just asking.
If there are healthy ways to be a vegan and healthy ways to be an omnivore, then I think
Those things
we
both
can
exist,
stop
right?
that. And I agree they both exist, and I think we can now then have the debate about the ethics of it, which
Yeah.
is different. I think there are concerns on both spectrums and benefits on both spectrums.
Yeah, I just,
With regard to Rex's ethical concerns though, Owen, you didn't allude the point, but let's get back to it. Do you find any of that compelling? Either of you hardcore carnivores, when you bite into a hamburger, do you feel any guilt?
well,
So only if I eat the bun with it. So I
Explain it though.
I know
That's funny.
I don't eat sugar or carbs. I'm a keto guy. No, I'm just cut them out totally. So I am aware that animals had to suffer. I'm aware that factory farming is problematic, and so Rex would complain even about this. But I choose to eat free range food. Is it elitist? Yes, I would argue that being a vegetarian or a vegan in the Western world is also somewhat elitist, and that the whole world couldn't subsist like that, and I get it, okay? But
I would argue that.
I would argue that.
So, well, okay, watch the
Financially,
presentation,
yeah.
because I've got the science that proves it,
Okay.
that
It's the science that alleges.
that land.
Science that
land-
alleges.
Land,
Yeah.
so I came with sources. There are
Some
plenty of
dissonance,
studies,
I like it.
some of them even cited by PBS Nova, clearly a right-wing propaganda machine that demonstrate that land use is really optimized when making use of animal products.
If we're trying to maximize
There's
the global
data.
population, which is
There
no
is,
one's goal.
there is, so the argument is that sustainability, right, is more achievable by feeding food to humans than raising food, feeding
Speciesism.
animals, and
I
feeding
mean-
animals to humans. So I'm only replying to that perspective. The answer to your question is sure, I absolutely feel a sense of culpability.
Owen lives with rescue dogs, and I see the
Culpability for-
love that these dogs get and the attention these
yeah,
dogs
right
get.
there, I love
And I
that.
think about the cows and the pigs that he eats, and I think they have all the same parts and feelings, and
I think necessarily speciesism actually
That's a form of
talks,
prejudice.
talks to the, but it
You're
it's-
admitting your prejudice
yeah,
when
but
you
it
say you're
speaks to the
species.
speaks to the necessity that speciesism is necessary for our survival.
We can survive.
Speciesism is
without any
necessary
prejudice.
for our survival.
I wouldn't go that
Yeah.
far.
I'm not gonna go that far.
If you became too selfish about our concerns, then it could,
Yeah, it would necessarily-
it could inadvertently damage things out here that could inadvertently affect you negatively. So that's why I would say that. But the only thing that I wanted to say on this is the question itself of like,
No,
you know,
you're right.
you're a vegan, you're an omnivore. Doesn't what he's concerned with affect you? I think people have different values and different things that that are important to them.
Sure.
And you can have the same knowledge base, but it's going to motivate one person to go to one direction
Yeah.
and not be as compelling to another person to change their behavior or whatever. If your values are different and if you have a different reason for why you eat certain things or whatever, then I think that's fine.
but you know what? This is humanism, right?
Right.
Humanism is
He's
when
the
we-
ultimate humanist to the point of
Yeah,
prejudice.
Well, no,
exactly.
so
To the
I
point
don't-
of
I don't
prejudice
think-
because
I
I
don't
think that speciesism is
He
necessary.
thinks humans are not only the number one thing on the
Speciesism
planet,
is
that
necessary.
everything else can suffer.
That's not humanism though.
No, it is. It's
It's like an
essentially
extreme form of
it's
humanism.
an extreme form of
It's a
humanism.
different
Humanism.
thing altogether.
I don't think humanism automatically puts humans on a platform. I think
Yeah.
humanism means we use our human intellect and our human
I do.
experience and our human observation to solve these ethical problems, right?
Yeah.
None of us are making reference
they have a
to
prefrontal
the Dominion
cortex.
quote in
I mean-
Genesis or making reference to the food laws in Leviticus that it's okay to kill. the Christians might say our relationship with animals is sanctioned by the Bible and by the
Yeah,
created universe.
sure.
So we're doing humanism when we're using our own experience and our own intellect
What's that called,
to
dominionists,
solve this problem.
They're all there for us.
It doesn't mean we're all going to agree. It just at least means we're using our tools instead of religious tools.
And I'm with Rex on that. Are there things that can be improved? None of the ethical arguments he would make to support veganism are bad arguments. They're all actually
No,
quite
they're good.
Do you feel any
And I've
guilt
heard
when you
I
bite
think
into a
they're
hamburger?
good.
I'm sorry.
Do you feel any guilt when you bite into a hamburger?
No.
No. I know you don't.
And let me reply. And I'll say this. I don't feel any guilt that I drove here in a vehicle.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
huge
Fossil
portion-
fuels
a
that
huge
we
portion- a
use
huge
to
portion
get
of the
here.
world.
Exactly.
A huge portion of the world doesn't have the wealth to purchase the vehicle that I have. I don't
She's
feel
right.
guilty that I live in a 2,400 square foot house with 3 dogs and no children and a wife.
Yeah.
Right, with 4 bedrooms, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Two
Why-
people
why
live
is
in
it-
there, and I got 4 bedrooms. I don't
That's a
feel,
great point.
I don't feel guilt about that. I don't feel guilt about the wealth that was spent for me to attend college. What, 5% of the world that has a college degree, and I don't feel guilty about that. Is it a misuse of resources compared to the rest of the world? You bet your ass it is.
No,
Of course
No,
it is.
just to the animal
I
suffering
agree.
itself.
No, my point is that we are comparing suffering across everything that happens in the world.
Yeah,
Okay?
you're thinking bigger picture.
Mosquito nets could prevent transmittable diseases in Africa.
But yet they're
and yet-
bad to mosquitoes.
And yet I have indoor air conditioning and a college degree and 3 cars in our household because I just got a new one literally recently and haven't, so I'm donating the old car to charity, by the way. But anyway, that's the point, is that my wife and I are poster children for living with means that are beyond what most of the world has. Okay, I'm not living beyond my means, but we have means that most of the rest of the world has. I am fortunate in a way that I can't do anything about unless I sell everything I own and give it to the poor. So do I feel guilty about not selling everything I own and giving it to the poor? No, I don't.
Do you? You don't.
I don't.
You don't.
I don't. But you're asking me a question about an extremely narrow set of moral considerations.
Yes.
When my reply is, there are moral considerations that
Yes.
touch literally everything I do.
And we have to do the work on all of those topics.
And we have to do the work on all
So
of those
I made an
topics.
analogy to Owen when he first threw this at me, and he knows I don't think this is a good argument.
He does.
When he first gave me this, we were standing in his living room, and I said, okay, let's talk about the litter on the side of the road, right? There are some problems that are like litter on the side of the road, in that all we really need to do is not throw our trash out the window, and there would be no litter on the side of the road. And you can take a further step than that. You can go out the highway and actually pick up some litter. You can be part of the solution. You can actually go, do the research if beautification projects help diminish that, or if turning up the fees and prison time for litterers, or like there's different approaches to this problem, right? But none of those solutions would even need to happen if people would just stop throwing the litter out.
Right.
And I think about this with animal activism as well. Like if you just stop participating, just stop killing and eating the animals, the problem goes away. Now, some people will do more than that, right? Some people will actually get out there and campaign to change factory farming and leaflet at concerts and try to convince people. You're right. If you're spending dollars and hours on activism, then maybe you've got a point that those dollars and hours could go to clean water wells in Africa or mosquito netting or whatever other cause you want to say. But if I merely just stop participating and eat something else, then I still have all of my
You're making a
dollars.
statement.
I still have all of my hours and dollars to go help any of those problems. And I'm sure we could all do more on those other problems. But this is a freebie, right? All I have to do is not participate, and then I get all the benefit of the animals not being killed and eaten, and I still have my hours and dollars to put into other causes.
And all I would have to do is abstain from driving a vehicle. So if we talk about abstaining and not abstaining, if we use that language, my reply to, and we're almost having a conversation again. My reply is that I can abstain from lots of things. I can abstain from spending money, which means I could give it to more, I could do other things with it.
Exactly.
I can frame everything in my life from a framework of abstaining or not abstaining.
And in many cases, we probably should, but not all of them are solved by that. Like there's no action I could take to fix all the problems in Africa right now. Africa has economic problems, Africa has health problems, Africa has governmental problems, Africa has financial problems. I can care about all of those things, and there are things I can take to help. but I can't fix that on my own. The animal problem, the only reason that any company is raising and slaughtering and selling the flesh of animals is because we're demanding it.
Yes.
If we stop, that problem
Because I
fixes
eat it.
itself.
Because I eat it.
So many
That's what
other
you're saying?
problems are so much more complex than that. That one's got an easy solution. It's a freebie. And you still have all your resources to do the other things.
Okay.
TJ, do you not think that's true?
No, I get it.
That
I mean, I just
the
like.
demand and the supply?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've said my piece, and I don't disagree with
Now,
you.
so let me throw something that sort of helps frame this and where we started this conversation is that I am obviously very passionate about veganism. I'm very passionate about atheism. I spend lots of time and effort on atheism. I spend almost no time on veganism. And you know why? Because I found it to be utterly ineffective. I have talked so many people out of religion. I've talked almost no one out of meat. And so even though I would wave a magic wand and make the whole world atheist, and I would wave a magic wand and make the whole world vegan, I have not found vegan advocacy to be terribly effective at all. And all I can conclude
Much
from
harder.
this is it's much easier to give up Jesus than to give up bacon.
Yeah. Right?
That's
interesting.
Yeah, go ahead. Because I can say about those.
Okay, so the voice of the chair in the corner. For one, I just wanted to point out that there's a large gray area between your viewpoint and your viewpoint.
There is.
And I feel like we're
Lots of
painting
colors,
it
not just
as
gray.
well, I just feel like, from hearing conversation, it's like you either eat meat or you super don't. And like, understanding the plight of animals and the factory farms and all that, we could at least move away from eating meat. And I think that many people, I feel that way. I understand. I wish I could not eat meat, but let's face it, it's cheap and I need it. My body has evolved to need it. And therefore, and that's kind of what I'm thinking when we get to the point of one, kind of
wrong.
you have to be able to afford it to live this lifestyle. But, do you not think it's true that if I immediately became a vegan, I would have problems if I didn't take supplemental vitamins?
Yeah, supplemental vitamins, but that's the point is that you don't have to have that in order to get the vitamins you need in other ways.
So
But recognizing
okay.
that those provide that and the importance of it is important to know.
Okay, I mean, that is something that's important to know. We did not evolve knowing these things about vitamins as
Right.
we grew up as a species eating meat and sometimes plant and, hunter-gatherer, blah, 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 whatever the case may be. Secondly, so we can move away from eating too much meat. But I also think that no one's really addressed your core reason for feeling this way, and that is that this is the only way to sustain the population we have. But just keep this in mind that nobody's really addressed the fact that if we were to try to transition everybody in the world to a vegan diet, how would that really look?
So there's actually some.
There was disagreement between them.
There's actually some
between
data. There is some research that suggests that through using animal products, maybe not eating meat, but certainly cheese and milk,
Sure.
dairy, eggs,
leather.
That they call it ovo-lacto vegan. Okay, so milk, eggs, and vegan. That
It's called a vegetarian.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Basically a vegetarian but not animal product free diet is more capable of sustaining the caloric and dietary needs of a large population
Sure.
than any other diet choice.
So I just want to point out that that's the ethical argument. And one other thing I wanted to interject with before was there is the Aristotle approach to arguments, ethos, pathos, and logos. And I think especially as atheists, we focus really hard on the logos, the logic. But I think one of the reasons why, Jim, you were mentioning earlier, you show up to church dressed like that, and they show up to church dressed like that, how do they get more respect? Well, it's obvious that they're dressed like that. And when you go to church dressed in a suit and tie, people respect
I'm
you.
going to start doing that.
Whether we can sit here and logically say that that actually has nothing to do with their
Wow.
arguments is irrelevant to convincing them. Because Aristotle would say that convincing people involves the ethos, like being an ethical person,
Yeah.
and part of that is dressing the part. Then there's the pathological part, which is connecting to them on an emotional level about whatever you're trying to communicate to them. And
In terms of a way to have a healthy diet, there's lots of ways to go about that, but you know, if your goal is to live longer, if that's a
Need some more.
specific thing that you want, then vegan is the way to go, right?
I would agree.
Yeah,
Is
and
it weird that I'm like so
but-
in love with Lance's
well,
reasoning
okay,
right now?
so
Because he validates what you want to hear.
right. Exactly. But so okay, so it just depends on the individual. Like what you were saying about the vitamins that you need based on your skin and your body and where your geography and all of that. You know, just kind of tailoring what's optimal for your life to what your values are, which is whether it's going vegan or whatever. It's just such a complicated thing that I think is individual, and educating people is important, and getting people the information they need to make an informed moral decision for them. But it's going to always go down to what is going to be good for them.
Sure.
And that's not always vegan. And I think the stigma around being a non-meat eater is that there's this like angry judgment of meat eaters. And that's why I was annoyed by that question, is because, you know, that's the question that meat eaters think that you're asking just by saying that you're a vegan or a pescatarian.
I'm not militant when I say that.
Well, that's what I mean though, is that that's, you know, it doesn't matter.
The question about guilt.
I have
Yeah,
feedback, but I
the
have
question about
feedback.
guilt.
I have
Go ahead.
feedback. So, no one lashed out at Rex, and no one was angry at Rex when we made our vegan and Omni presentation to the FOAP, and there's a video of it. But there were hundreds of replies, some of whom calling me a liar, even though I brought 140
But you were on the
literally.
opposite side of it. They called you a liar. didn't they?
Yeah, because the vegans were angry that anyone would stand up and say, I question
I
the
disagree
narrative.
with this.
I question the vegan narrative. I don't think it's necessary. I don't
Well, that's
necessarily
bullshit.
even sign up to agree.
Can they not see the
I-
contradiction with this and the believer argument?
So this was an interesting lesson for everybody involved.
This is why we're not jumping up and down to do this
This
again.
is why, like, when we were writing the presentation, we talked about giving this as one of the presentations that we give. And I'm not sure I'm happy to do it again, but I don't want to deal with the flame wars that followed. And there were
And it was all aimed at
There's
us.
gonna be a lot of. There's
It
gonna
was-
be a lot
it was-
of
it was
stuff.
like-
This was a room full of atheists,
This was
and
a
they
room
don't
full of
see the
atheists.
contradiction in their animus towards you, and then they
Whether they see it or
They don't-
not, so we built a lot of bridges. I am
Are you
far
okay
far
with that
closer
characterization?
friends with a lot of the vegans who were involved in that set of conversations than I ever would have been before. And I think that because we kind of went through that fire sort of as a group, that we're closer together. But I still have a feeling that on the vegan only secret groups on Facebook, I have occasionally vilified.
No, it's never
Yeah.
gone.
That's sad.
I don't know.
That's unfortunate.
Okay, so the point, Jim, that you're making about it's a room full of atheists is, you know, that's true about anybody, is that just because you may or may not be logical around this topic of religion, and you may not be an atheist for logical reasons as well, so that group of people doesn't mean that they're logical about anything else. You know, I think
No.
I think
Yes,
it's
You're right.
That's a
No.
very good point.
Well, no, and so actually, I think they would
can-
say, I think the vegans you were arguing with, and I deliberately stayed out of the conversation, the vegans you were
Looks better
arguing
than
with were, they would say, look at the evidence and you realize religion is man-made. Look at the evidence and you realize that our exploitation of animals is immoral. Like in both cases, they would say
Yeah.
that their position is evidence-based.
And I had a presentation that offered a different take on
Sure.
that. And
Sure.
So you're
it's all
saying-
liar.
They're acting like Christians when they're coming at you so hard,
Yeah.
though, and they
Well-
don't even realize it.
Well, but again,
I
that's
don't
the
mind
nature
that,
of deeply
listen.
held beliefs. If you have a
Yes,
deep, if you have a
exactly. When
deeply
you
held
tell somebody
belief-
they're wrong,
I want people to
Well,
be
wait,
passionate.
wait.
But
But
let Courtney
well, it's just that
characterize it.
it's just that if you have a deeply held belief, like I was saying earlier, it's human. It's not, you know, atheists are not immune to this.
No.
Is that it's subconscious, it's in your brain, you're going to react in a certain way, and it's going to be this internal conflict. No matter what it is about political, you know, whatever it is about deeply held beliefs, it could be any topic, and
Sure,
And,
and
you know-
lots of topics. I mean, think
Yeah.
about, like I went to the American Atheist Conference in Oklahoma City recently, and that organization obviously is very politically left-leaning, and so if someone comes there,
For sure.
they would imagine that atheism is synonymous with democratic, almost socialist.
so.
Yeah, but if you come back to Dallas and you go to the FOF, there are lots of atheists at the FOF who are either libertarian or socially progressive. There are atheists who are profoundly pro-choice, and there are others that are pro-life. There are atheists that split on the death penalty. There are atheists that split over, economic justice. There are atheists that split
Every
over
subject.
patriotism and America first versus.
This is a great
versus
segue into
global.
that last little subset of this talking
Yeah.
point. The last thing, if you remember, that I was gonna ask you, you were at that AA con.
We both went.
And it was predominantly, of course, given the,
I mean, that's that organization.
given that organization,
Right.
predominantly Democrat and liberal.
Yes.
But if you look at the larger atheist community, it is disproportionately
is.
liberal and Democrat.
I think so.
And vegan and vegetarian and gay and transgender and white.
We got 23 minutes left before.
Well, there's certainly not I don't think there's a majority
Can
of
you
atheists
explain
that
any
are,
of those?
there's not a majority of atheists that are vegetarians and vegans. There's probably higher than the
That's what that's what I was saying.
I don't think
It's
atheism is
disproportionately.
an
Well, I think-
indication of
I think
whether or
the
not
answer-
somebody is a vegetarian or a vegan.
No, it's
I think the answer to your question is if someone is going to
No.
live deliberately on one subject, they're
Yes.
more likely to live
Yes.
deliberately on
Yeah.
multiple subjects.
Absolutely.
There's
Most,
a new-
I mean, think about what
that's
most
involved.
Americans stay where they were born. If you were born into a conservative Republican family, you're going to stay there. If you were
Probably,
born into a
yeah.
Christian home, you're going to stay there. If you were born in an Omni home, you're going to stay there. Most people stay put. But as soon as you make the intellectual leap to abandon a religion or abandon a political view or abandon a diet choice, then you're more likely to open your eyes. This happened to me. I mean, I first became a vegetarian, and then I became an atheist, and then I became a vegan. And you'll find
You were a
people's views-
vegetarian before you were an atheist?
Yes, he already explained that.
Oh, I said before.
About 2 years before I was an atheist. The vegetarian came first, then the atheism came. And I had abandoned a cult before that. But I've actually found that if you go through life saying, I want to be right. If there's any idea that I hold right now that's wrong, I want someone to change my
Does it
mind.
matter to you whether or not the things you believe are true?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I'm
That's
totally
that's-
committed to
That's what
truth.
he's saying.
And that's why I say,
Yes.
and I say this to Christians at church, if I'm wrong, I want you to convince me. I'm not one of these atheists that say, keep your religion in church and don't talk to me about it. I'm like, come on, knock on my door, talk to me
Convince
about
me.
it. Right, convince me.
Hit me with
Yes.
that.
I'll have you in my home, I'll make the coffee.
Rex and I talk all the time, and one of the questions he loves to ask is there anything else that you might be wrong about? Like,
Yeah.
is there anything else in your life that
I find that
you can
addictive,
change?
right? Like
And it's an extremely penetrating good question. It forces introspection, it forces reflection,
We've talked about this recently. If I spend a weekend watching Noam Chomsky and I come back thinking, man, what do I really think about private property? And how much of that can I justify? I'm not saying I've changed my mind on this. I'm just saying there are new frontiers where we might change our mind if the evidence came along.
He really disagrees with Sam Harris.
He does.
on those points.
Being an atheist and an evidence-based thinker kind of opens the door. Once you challenge the central dogma of your life, and once you cross that threshold, then you are suddenly empowered to ask questions about every single presumption you've ever thought you had. And I say thought because it was there, but maybe it wasn't consciously achieved. The idea of private property, the idea of social
why is that
justice.
self-evident?
Right. There
Do you
are.
believe-
Don't
there-
get started.
The idea of patriotism.
The idea of patriotism.
The idea that there's anything that should come first about America versus how we think about the whole world.
Right, there are some extraordinary
Property.
questions that you are
Kenny,
encountering.
we only have 15 minutes left, and I get the final
And
question.
I'm not even claiming an answer on any of these, I'm just asking the
Go ahead,
question.
go
I'm just
ahead.
saying it's valid to ask the
These
question.
are deep questions
Yeah.
that we should always be asking ourselves all the time. There should never be a single dogmatic presumption in your life that is untested or that is unchallenged.
Yeah,
Lance, I'm sorry.
one thing I wanted to.
We gotta put a ball in this.
We want to hear
Yeah.
Courtney's.
Well, it's
on this.
really short. It's just that the mentality of a religious perspective is that there's a plan in place, that everything is the way it is because it's part of a perfect
There's an
plan.
authority.
Yeah, and that when you look around the world as a Christian, you see it as part of a perfect plan that you are too small to understand. And when you let go of that mentality, you now feel responsibility for the way that the world is.
Right.
And so if you feel that this is an injustice about veganism and all of this, then you fight to change that if you are motivated to in that way. Is that, everybody's gonna have different interests and different values, and you may go a different direction with something else. But the state of there may be more atheists, or there may be more vegetarians and vegans within atheism than within other populations, that makes sense to me, because you now feel a responsibility for making the world better, because the world is the way it is because we made it that way, and we have the power and responsibility to make it better.